Hi and welcome back to the House of the Stag YouTube channel. It's time to talk about yet another brand new not a blog update from George R.R. Martin. It took me quite a while to get to it, but here we are, so let's do it. I'll focus on the most important parts. Make sure to stick around. I think most people missed something big in this update. At least that's what it seems like. I've seen no one talk about it. Let's start with George's latest House of the Dragon update. House of the Dragon. Glad you asked. I've now watched rough cuts of 9 of the 10 episodes and I continue to be impressed. I cannot speak to the special effects, many of which are not in yet, but the look of it is great and the acting, the directing and writing are first rate. And yes, for all you book fans, it is my story. Sure, there are some changes from Fire and Blood. We could not present 3 alternative versions of every major event, not and keep our sanity. But I think Ryan Condal and his writers made great choices. Even some improvements. Heresy, I know, but being the author, I'm allowed to say so. For years, as some of you may recall, I have been saying the TV version of Shay, as portrayed by Sibel Kekili, was a deeper, richer, and more nuanced character than the Shay in my novels. In a similar vein, I am vastly impressed by the show's version of King Viserys, played by Paddy Considine, who gives the character a tragic majesty that my book Viserys never quite achieved. Kudos to Paddy, Ryan and his writers, and Miguel and the other directors. There are a lot of great performances in House of the Dragon, or Hot D as I hear some are calling it. You may never have heard of some of our actors, but I think you will learn to love them, just as you did with the cast of Game of Thrones. See, I told you. The man can't do 3 blog posts without talking about how much he loves this show, which leaves me to believe that, yeah, he really likes it. It's not the usual author blindly praises the adaptation for promo purposes. He's seen 9 out of 10 episodes now, which has me both very hopeful and jealous. The fact that George keeps talking about the faithfulness of this adaptation is music to my ears. I talked about Ryan Condal and the writing team in great detail already. Definitely go check out that video if you're not really sure if you should give this show a chance after season 8 of Game of Thrones. A lot has changed. Ryan and George really kept in touch all throughout the writing process. According to Ryan, he always tried his best to make sure that his creative choices fit in with the canon. He wanted to hear what George has to say about it. To adapt the Dance of the Dragons is a tricky thing. It's mostly biased work, so you can never really take anything for granted. House of the Dragon will likely become the canon for this time frame. From the origin of the bitter rivalry between Otto and Daemon, or the Rhaenyra and Criston Cole situation, up until the battle above God's Eye, I really believe we'll get definitive answers in the show. George is very impressed with Paddy Considine's portrayal of King Viserys Targaryen and describes him as tragic majesty. Paddy is a phenomenal actor. People who've seen him in Peaky Blinders will know that. So there was never any doubts in my mind that he'll be a great Viserys. So what could have impressed George so much that he goes as far as to say that it's an improvement? I'll go into more depth in the Viserys video for the Explained series, but I think the reason for his praise is something that George talks about all the time. His love for conflicted characters. Viserys is a decent man, but as we know, good people don't always make for good kings. I believe the build-up of the rivalry between Blacks and Greens will likely dictate about 90% of our first season, which leads me to believe that we'll see Viserys struggling to do the right thing, struggling to please everyone and trying to maintain the peace. Him proclaiming his first daughter, the person he loves more than anything in the world, as his heir, and just trying to be a good king is very tragic when you look at what follows. I really can't wait to see it. Scenes between Otto, Viserys and Daemon at the Small Council could make for everything that made me fall in love with this world in the first place. The 21st of August can't come soon enough. Anyways, George also had something to say about the Winds of Winter. Not much, but at this point we might as well take what we get, right? Winds, you say? Yes, still working. Finally finished a clutch of Cersei chapters that were giving me fits. Now I'm wrestling with Jaime and Brienne. The work proceeds, though not as fast as many of you would like. We have to keep in mind that George doesn't write in chronological order, so it doesn't mean that neither Jaime or Brienne survived Stoneheart. I think they will, but not because of this update. I doubt that we will get both Brienne and Jaime POVs, because I think they will spend the majority of Winds of Winter together, but I could be wrong. I think we're in for a Red Wedding 2.0, though I don't expect it to be glorified like in Season 7 of Game of Thrones. It would make a lot of sense if what happens at Riverrun challenges Brienne's morale. We'll see. It doesn't surprise me that Cersei chapters give him fits, given where we leave off in King's Landing. The aftermath of the killing of Kevin will leave the city in chaos, and it's quite likely that Cersei will gain some of her influence back. We still have the Faith Militant roaming around though, and I don't see George blowing up the Sept of Baelor anytime soon. He has to kill some characters, sure, but I don't think it's going to be that easy. Then there's young Griff and Jon Con. I believe that young Griff will sit on the Iron Throne before Winds of Winter ends, but there's still so much that needs to happen until that is even possible. Well, I'm drifting off again. That's pretty much all I have to say about the Winds of Winter update. I honestly think George should stick to what he was doing for years when it comes to the Winds of Winter, not saying anything. This really doesn't help anyone, and given how hurt he seemed in recent interviews, it certainly doesn't help himself. Now, I talked about how people missed something in this update. Well, I have decided not to attend this year's Worldcon in Chicago for a variety of reasons. Chicago remains one of my favorite cities though, and it looks as though I may be traveling there once or twice during the year to come, for reasons quite different and much more exciting than a con. I was really thinking about it for quite some time. George loves attending Comic Cons. He's been doing it for decades, so what could be more exciting to him than that? So I went and revisited his older blog posts. He keeps talking about how he can't talk about certain things. This was very much the case in his huge update about the television shows in development. Out of all the TV shows he mentioned, there was one that seemed to be quite advanced. Dunk and Egg. He's going to visit Chicago this year, and guess who lives in Chicago? Steve Conrad, the potential showrunner of the Dunk and Egg show. What a coincidence. If you've been watching my stuff for a while, then you know that this is my #1 most wanted show ever. Later this year could also mean after House of the Dragon. If House of the Dragon does well, this might just be our next show, and I can die a happy man. That's all I have for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one. I recently started making spoiler-free character analysis videos for our main characters of House of the Dragon. Make sure to check them out. Take care and see us later.